Welcome to the 11th video of the Blender 2.8 Beginners Tutorial series. In this video we will create the water drops on the apple using a particle system so that the apple looks really wet. As always, you can find the timestamps in the video description below, and if you want to follow along, sign up to our resource section free of charge, where you can download all the project files, textures and videos for this course and our handy Blender 2.8 shortcut PDF. Hi everyone, Zach here for ctboost.com, and let's get started. Alright, for adding the drops here on the apple, let's hide all the other stuff for now so that we can only see the apple here. And before we now add anything to the apple, we need to create the models for the drops. So the cursor is over here in the center. If not, right click on snap and cursor to world origin. Then hit Shift A, add a simple cube, press S to scale it down. Control A, apply the scale. Then let's add a modifier, the subdivision surface modifier, and set the viewport subdivisions to 2. Then let's tap into edit mode, press numpad 3 to show it from the right. Everything is selected. Let's press S, lock this along the Z axis and make this more flat. And with Control R, I add a loop cut over here and move it down. So now let's take a look from above, make sure that X-ray is enabled. Let's go to the vertex selection. And now we want to create a few variations of this drop. First of all, let's tap back to object mode. Let's call this one drop. Shift and D, press X, move it to the side, tap to edit mode, and then let's select the upper part here, press E to extrude this, press S for scaling, then lock this along the X axis, make this a bit smaller, and move it around and just deform all this stuff just a bit. Then let's tap back to object mode, Shift and D, duplicate this once again, scale this along the Y axis, make this a bit more flat, extrude this here once again, and let's also extrude this one here, scale this along the X axis. And let's create another duplicate and scale this along the X-axis. Extrude this a bit. Let's extrude this here. And again, let's change the shape of this here. So then let's select all of them, right click and click on Shade Smooth. Then let's add a very simple material. Let's go to the materials. Create a new one, let's call it water, and simply change the transmission value of the principled shader to 1 to have a transparent material with refraction, and set the roughness down to 0. In order for the viewport to also interact with other objects, we have to go to the settings down here and enable screen space refraction, and important in the render settings, under screen space reflections, this should be enabled, and also refractions should be enabled. Now also other objects, as you can see here, will be interacting with the refraction here. So then let's increase the brightness to be really white so that this is really transparent. And now let's simply copy this over to the other objects. And this we can do by simply left clicking and holding your mouse button on this little icon from the library. Left click and hold and drag and drop it onto the other objects. I want to use all these drops in one particle system later on. That means we have to group them, and that we can do by creating a new collection over here. So a collection is basically just this kind of folder where all the objects are stored inside, and we can create new collections if we like. So we have this default collection here. Let's double click on this and simply call it scene. Let's click on the main collection over here, which just covers the whole 3D scene. And let's create a new one, which we just call drops. So double click on that and rename this. So now we have to move all of these drops into the new collection. The simplest way to do this is by simply selecting all of them with Shift, then left click on one and hold and drag and drop it over here. Or here, right click, click on Move to Collection or M, and then choose the collection where these objects should be moved in. Alright, now let's get back to the apple over here. The apple is selected. Now let's go to the particle settings, create a new particle system, Let's call this one drops. And by default, we have the emitter type. When I quickly switch to the animation workspace and start the animation, you can see that this apple now emits little circles, but this is not what I want. So let's go back to layout and enable the hair system, because we want to have a hairy apple. No, certainly not. We want to replace all these hairs with objects. And in order to do that, let's go to the render settings here. Behind render as, let's change this from pass to collection. And down here, instance collection, let's choose the drops collection. And now you can see we have all these objects here, but the rotation is wrong because for whatever reason, a particle system is always using the x-axis as up axis. So as the one which is showing upwards, which is kind of weird. However, we can quickly fix that. Down here, let's enable object rotation. Then this will copy the rotation of the object. So let's select the drops, press R, Y, and rotate this 90 degrees along the y-axis so that they are basically pointing towards the x-axis. Now let's select the apple once again. Here in the render settings, we can also change the scaling of the drops. So they should be relatively small. And we want to scale them randomly. If I increase the scale randomness, we have some bigger and some smaller drops, which is quite nice. Then I also want to have random rotation. For that, I have to enable the advanced options, which basically adds velocity and rotation down here. Enable rotation. In the options, increase the phase to 1, and then we can basically randomize the phase. So we can randomize the rotation. Let's put this to 2 to have the maximum of randomness here. And now we need to decrease the number of drops. For that, let's go to emission and decrease the number. I think a number of 250 or similar is fine here. And right now we can see that only half of the drop is pointing outwards because you can see the origin of the drop is in the center. And this origin will be placed on the surface of the apple. To change this, simply let's select all of them, tap to edit mode, select everything. And now we basically have to move this along the x-axis. So let's quickly use the move tool. And then if I move this over here, you can see how the drops will move out of the surface. Certainly they shouldn't hover in the air, so let's move this back just a bit. Let's tap back to object mode, and I think this looks a bit better. So now let's randomize the position a bit more. Here under emission, let's go to source, and first of all, let's enable use modifier stack. That means this particle system takes all the modifiers we have added to the apple into account. And let's change the distribution to random to have a bit more random result. Also, you can always change the seed over here to change the random placement of the drops. Now there's one little problem, which is not really a problem, but sometimes we have too large drops here on the stem and this doesn't look so realistic. So let's exclude the stem from the particle system. And for that we have to switch to edit mode, deselect everything, and we hover the mouse above the stem, press L to select it. Then let's go to the object data tab down here, create a new vertex group. Let's call it stem and click on assign. Now we grouped all the selected vertices in here, and now we can exclude these from the particles. Tap back to object mode, go to the particle settings, then go down to vertex groups, click into density and select the stem vertex group. Now all the drops are only on the stem. Let's click this little invert button so that the stem will be excluded. And if you like, you can also go to the shading workspace once again and add a bit more glossiness to the apple. Now let's also add the drops to the other two apples here. Simply select this, go to the particle system, create a new particle system slot here, and we want to have the same particle system as over here. So let's go to the library of the particle systems and use the drops. So for this apple, 250 drops are maybe a bit much. Let's select this and duplicate the particle system so we can change this. Let's call it drops apple cut. So I duplicated the particle system similar to materials. So I have the same settings as over here as foundation, but now I can change this without affecting the particle system over here. So let's simply cut this in half. Let's divide this by 2. We can also use math inside these number fields. Press enter. And then this will be divided by 2. And I also want to exclude the upper part here. So let's tap into edit mode. This is still selected. Let's add a vertex group. Let's call it drop and assign this. Go to the particle settings, vertex groups, choose the drops and invert this. So as you can see, we don't want to have something like that. So let's tap back to edit mode and with Ctrl+, let's increase the selection. Assign this once again and see if this works. I think that works fine. So we don't have drops here on the edge. And now let's do the same thing over here. Here we can choose the same particle system for the apple cut. Tap to edit mode, hit Ctrl+ to increase the selection. Go to object data and add a new vertex group. Hit assign, call this drops, and let's go to the particle settings, vertex group, choose drops and invert this. Now also the other 2 apples here have this nice water drops. Let's go back to layout and don't forget to save your blend file. Yeah guys, now you have a basic idea on how to use the hair particles to scatter objects across surfaces. This certainly can not only be used for placing water drops on apples, you can place basically anything on any surface. So be creative with this particle system. If you want to get even deeper into Blender 2.8 and support our YouTube channel, check out our top-rated Blender 2.8 Launchpad course where you will learn the fundamentals of Blender 2.8 and create an animated scene from scratch. Check out the free preview lessons on the product page and check out this clip here by one of our students which did an amazing job by extending the animation we will create in the course with some other fun things. Thanks a lot for watching guys. Now check the next video where we will assemble the scene. That means we will pick a nice camera perspective and then place all the objects we have created before nicely in our scene, and we will use a rigid body simulation to throw a bunch of apples into the bowl. I will see you there. Goodbye.